Hey YouTube, Bob here. Coming to you today not with a collection video, but with a cleaning video. Because I know a lot of people in the YouTube gaming community are collectors, and when you collect things, you'll come across sets like this Nintendo set that I found recently, and they aren't always in the best of shape, particularly the controllers, because naturally people hold them in their hands might not always be clean, and controllers by design have a lot of little cracks and crevices where dirt can accumulate. And I find particularly controllers are problematic because a lot of gamers eat or drink while they're playing. So a lot of times there is food or drink residue in the controller as well. These particular controllers, I'll show them to you here, they aren't really in that bad a shape at all. They just have the standard dirt buildup in the cracks. But controllers are fairly easy to clean. But I have a particular way that I do it, and I'm going to share that with you guys today. These are the tools that I use when I clean controllers. And first of all, on the left here, you need a way to get into the controller, so naturally a screwdriver. NES, Super NES, and N64 controllers are held together by very small Phillips head screws, so you'll need a set of jeweler's screwdrivers to open them up. You can use usually the larger of the two Phillips size screwdrivers in the set. GameCube controllers, however, use something called a security bit or a game bit, which is basically a star-shaped screw, and of course you need this special bit to open it up. There are two sizes usually, a larger one and a smaller one. The larger one is usually for consoles, and the smaller one is usually for game cartridges. Never really the controller. Now for cleaning, I use bleach, not much, and keep in mind when you use bleach, you run the risk of damaging the clothing you're wearing, any towels that you're using, because, well, bleach bleaches things. So keep that in mind when you use bleach, and I use a very small amount. I'll get into that in a minute. I also use paper towels, cotton swabs or Q-tips, and for getting into the tiny cracks and crevices, I like to use wooden skewers, commonly used in cooking for things like shish kebabs. Alright, step one, set up your work area. I prefer to use a paper towel because, like I said, if you use bleach, you run the risk of ruining any sort of clothing or towels that you're working with. Paper towels, that's not an issue. You use your jeweler's screwdriver to loosen each of the 6 screws in the controller, and I've already done that for all of these. Take the back panel off, provided you've loosened them all the way. And then you begin to take all the electronics out, because the way that I thoroughly clean these controllers, I submerge the plastic pieces only in water. So you definitely do not want to have any of the electronics attached. Cord comes out, as does the PCB board, and you can just set that aside. Okay, now with the controllers completely apart, you want to make sure that you dump your screws and set them aside. You want to make note if there are any screws that are any different length than others, because they will obviously have to go back into the same hole when you're putting things back together. NES screws, all 6 of them are the same length, so it's not an issue. So I just dump them out, collect them, and then I will save them for later to put back together. The next thing you can do is start to take all of the pieces out of the controller. There are pads for each of the buttons. Sometimes in the case of select and start, the pads are the buttons themselves. Take those out, set them aside, and then all you're left with is the D-pad and the A and B buttons, and you can dump those out as so. Then what you'll do is collect all the plastic pieces, and as you can see here, there's a lot of dirt that got trapped underneath the plastic in the D-pad section, and a lot of time dirt accumulates in the circular ring that the button sits in. And a lot of times too there'll be grime, as you can see right there, in the D-pad hole. So we're going to get all of that super clean. In order to scrub these controllers, you're going to have to soak them for, I usually do about 10 minutes. That usually loosens up all the dirt and grime and makes it a lot easier to clean out of the controller. So we'll get that set up in the sink over here. Okay, I usually fill the sink about half full with hot water, so I'm going to get that going. Okay, once your sink is about half full, maybe a third of the way full, this is where your bleach comes in. Remember, if you're wearing your favorite shirt or using dish towels that you care about, you run the chance of ruining them, so I suggest not using those. With the sink half full, add about a capful of bleach. You really do not need a lot. And this serves two purposes. Cleaning, obviously, and sanitizing, because bleach is a sanitizer. Use a handle or something that's bleach safe to stir it up. And then it's just a matter of dumping all the plastic pieces. Okay, first we'll do the shell, front and back of each controller. All the buttons, and then of course the pads. And I usually let those soak for about 10 minutes just to soften up all the dirt and grime that's on there. They tend to float unless of course you push them down. So in this case you can see that most of the pieces have sunk to the bottom, and you do want to make sure that they're totally submerged. So I'll get this piece down, this controller piece, and then the pad. Just a matter of having all the little nooks and crannies get filled with water. So there, we'll let that sit for about 5 to 10 minutes. And in the meantime, there's something productive that you can do. So while our plastic pieces are soaking, we can actually take some time to clean up the plastic plug and the cord that's attached to the PCB board. Because believe it or not, those actually do collect a lot of dust and dirt as time goes on. Taking care not to get the PCB board anywhere near the water. You want to keep these dry, of course. What I usually do to clean the plug, because believe it or not, these Nintendo plugs with the grip ridges that they have here do collect a lot of dirt, especially if the person left it plugged in the system for a long period of time. Dust would settle and collect in there. So I will usually take a Q-tip, dip it in the same bleach water that I'm using to soak my plastic pieces, and before I start wiping off the plug with it, I'll dab some of the excess water off on the paper towel, because you want to make sure to not get any water inside the plug here. So I will make sure that I get this part with the ridges really good. Same with the bottom. There's even a couple ridges on the side right here. And then I just generally wipe it around the side of the plug. Now, to clean the cord, and my dogs have become interested in the cord all of a sudden, so apologize if you hear them. To clean the cord, what I'll do, always taking care to keep the PCB board away from water, I'll take a single paper towel, soak it in the sink water with the bleach, fold it twice, long ways and short ways, and then take the cord and kind of sandwich it in between the paper towel, and with my fingers, squeeze and pull the cord just to kind of give it a good wipe. And you can go several ways, back and forth, until dirt stops coming off of it. And since I'm doing this dry for demonstration purposes, a little bit of dirt came off there. But a lot more will come off, depending of course on the controller, how dirty it is, if you use water. So by the time you're done cleaning the plugs and the cords on the controller, your plastic pieces that have been soaking in the sink are probably ready to be taken out. And I've done that already here, placing each one on the paper towel. I'm going to start with the back plastic shell. And what you'll notice on any sort of controller, where the seam comes together, there's usually a ridge, and that's a prime source of collection of dust and dirt and grime. So what I will do is I will take my wooden skewer, and with the tip, lightly, just kind of run it along the ridge there. And since all the dirt and grime has been softened up during the soaking process, it comes off very easily. And a good technique is to kind of take the skewer on its side and make sure you get the flat part of the ridge. Then on the back, Nintendo typically prints their logo. A lot of dirt and grime gets caught in that rectangle there. Just take your wooden skewer, run it along the ridge, and you'll knock all that dirt and grime out of there. There's a couple different ways you can take care of the dirt and grime on the actual text. Some people use a toothbrush. I find that to be a bit abrasive, especially since this is smooth plastic in here. A lot of times, a Q-tip that's been moistened with the same water from your sink, if you rub that along there and get the head of the Q-tip nice and roughed up, it'll get in those crevices and clean them out very well. Going to do the same thing for that little this little circular part in the middle here. See all the stuff that we're pulling off there on the Q-tip. You're going to want to do the same thing with the Q-tip with the holes for the screws. And that just about takes care of the back shell. You just want to make sure you get either your Q-tip or your wooden skewer in the places, any places where you see dirt. This particular controller has a little gouge in it right here that has collected dirt. Let's see if my wooden skewer may be a little not fine enough to get into that gouge. Although, yeah, it's doing a pretty good job of removing the dirt. Try to do that a couple more times here. Try the Q-tip. And yeah, that's a lot better. If you find that you're not getting things as clean as you'd like, you can always repeat the process. Try a solution such as formula, see if that helps. But already that little gouge in the back of the plastic is a lot cleaner than it was. Then you repeat the process, of course, for every back shell that you have. The front shell is a little bit trickier because it has the holes for the controller buttons, and there's usually a lot of dirt and grime inside of those. So I'll take my Q-tip and run it around this circle here. Even on the sides of the cross key here where a lot of dirt tends to get caught. And I'm not going to do quite as a thorough job as I would for the purposes of this video, but you guys get the idea. For every buttonhole, you just take your Q-tip. You can see there's some grime in there, and just do your best to scrub it out. And if you find that it's not working with the Q-tip, the nice thing about the skewer is that it has this long flat edge here. You can just hold it flush with the plastic surface, and a lot of times you'll get the dirt that the Q-tip couldn't get out. And of course, like the back shell, the front shell also has the ridge, but this time it's not on the outside, it's on the inside. So what you're going to want to do is perpendicularly to the ridge itself, you're going to want to run the wooden skewer along the edge to get all the dirt out. And sometimes dirt collects on the side here, the surface that touches the back shell. You just scrape gently back and forth with your wooden skewer. Sometimes, and I'm seeing a little bit here, dirt will collect whatever this overlay is, this textured overlay with all the text printed on it. Dirt can get trapped in between the edge of the overlay and the edge of the plastic controller. if you can, with your wooden skewer without damaging the overlay, just kind of run it in there, especially along the where the D-pad is, because that's where a lot of dirt gets trapped. And you can do the same thing for the select and start and around the A and B. And you'll notice after a while that the tip of your wooden skewer will start to get frayed. Of course, you'll have to use another one at that point. So this brings us to the pads. The pads don't really require much cleaning other than the soaking that you did, and a thorough drying, of course. What I usually do is just take a dry, not a wet, a dry paper towel, and just kind of blot them dry after the soaking. And you do that with each pad that was in the controller. And select and start buttons. Okay, now the buttons. D-pad. Hopefully you can see all that loosened up dirt along the side here, and then even where those arrows are printed on the D-pad itself. And that gets a little tedious, so I'm going to start there with a brand new wooden skewer. All you do, as you'd expect, is take your wooden skewer, run it along the outline of the arrow, and just kind of knock that dirt out of there. And this doesn't do a whole lot, but just to loosen up anything that wasn't loosened up in the soaking process, I just kind of run it along the outline of the D-pad before taking my Q-tip to it. And this is the most important part of the D-pad cleaning. With the broad side of your Q-tip, your cotton swab, just rub each side of the D-pad, getting that dirt out of there. And then the same process goes for the A and B buttons as well. The A and B buttons are identical, there's no difference, and they don't really have any special shape to them at all, just circular. So what you want to do is take your Q-tip and just rub it around the surface of the button. And once you've done that for all the buttons, be grateful we're doing an NES controller with so few buttons. If you're doing an N64 controller, oh, those are another story altogether. It takes a lot longer because of all the buttons. But this is a pretty simple process. Alright, so once everything has been soaked and scrubbed, it's time to put it back together. As you might expect, before you even think about putting the controller back together, you want to make sure that everything is absolutely as dry as possible. 100% dry. And I do this in a couple phases. First phase, I take a dry paper towel, blot the pads, wipe down the buttons, and dry off the shell pieces. However, the shell pieces have a lot of little nooks and crannies where water hides and may not even dry overnight. I recommend, of course, letting these sit overnight to dry, preferably under a fan if possible. But if you can't wait, if you're in a hurry, if they're 99% dry except for maybe the little holes right here, what I would recommend that you use before putting it back together is a can of compressed air, especially for the buttons that have a lot of little nooks and crannies. Take the compressed air, blow out the button, and it'll get that excess water out of there. Once everything is dry, preferably overnight, then you can put your clean controller back together. And there you have it, 2 squeaky clean NES controllers. And you may be thinking to yourself, oh, that process is a little bit involved. And it is, unless A, you have a controller that's really sticky and the buttons aren't working, or B, you're obsessive like I am. So I hope you're able to make this work for yourself in some way, and until next time, see you later.